In today's podcast, my guest is Laura Gisborne. She's a serial entrepreneur. I was very inspired by her story. She has worked with nonprofit organizations, and today she is talking about her fast focus process. I think it's critical as nonprofit marketing and communications professionals that we get our arms around what it is that we need to do to get things done. Because in the busy world that we live in, we can get distracted quite often. So tune in today's episode to learn what it is that Laura has to share, her wisdom and her knowledge about staying focused, getting things done, and making the most out of your time and effort when it is marketing your mission. You're listening to the Smart Marketing for Small Nonprofits podcast, episode number 72. Hi there, and welcome back, or welcome if you're new to the podcast. I'm thrilled that you're here because today we've got an amazing guest that I'm truly honored to introduce you to. Her name is Laura Gisborne, and she has done some pretty amazing work in this world. She is an internationally recognized speaker, has designed and built 9 different highly successful businesses, the first when she was just 23 years old, and she serves as a business consultant for business leaders and entrepreneurs in a very wide variety of industries, including the nonprofit sector, and has been directly involved with many nonprofits as either a consultant, a volunteer, or a board member for organizations like CASA, Habitat for Humanity, and the New Peaks Foundation, just to name a few. She has even written a couple of books, Stop the Spinning, Move from Surviving to Thriving, and Limitless Women. They were both so incredibly well received that she was invited to be a guest expert on both CBS and ABC, as well as on the national hit show The List. And guess how we met? Through LinkedIn, I came across her Limitless Women business profile and thought, wow, what an incredible woman and what an amazing mission she has. Limitless Women is all about fostering a community of givers. Laura helps women incorporate philanthropy into their business in a way that helps them fulfill an even greater purpose in their lives. So I sent her a direct message. I let her know my thoughts about what an amazing business I thought she had and that I'd love the opportunity to learn more about it. She replied with a genuine thank you and invited me to give her a call. So I did. In that brief conversation we had to get to know each other a little bit better, I quickly knew she was someone I wanted to introduce you all to. With her heart for service and her business savvy and her mission to inspire others to give deeply, as she says, I knew we could all benefit from her sharing her gisborne and her expertise as a guest on today's podcast. So I am very excited to introduce you to Laura Gisborne. Laura, thank you so very much for being a guest on today's podcast. I am truly honored to have you here, and I'm so excited about the conversation that we're going to be having about finding focus in the work that each of our nonprofit marketers and communicators are doing on a daily basis so that they can achieve the best possible results. But before we get there, I really want you to share with our audience a little about yourself and what it is that you do and why. You've got an amazing story.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here, and I apologize in advance because my voice is a little scratchy today. I'm just coming off of a little bit of a cold, but I'm really excited to be with you and honored for the opportunity to support you and support your community. So thank you for inviting me. And a little bit about what we do. You know, Limitless Women is a community that I founded several years ago. It was kind of like many nonprofits and like many private sector businesses, it was something that evolved over time. You know, we went out there and thought, how do we actually marry business with philanthropy? And when I first started having that conversation, 2010, I started being asked to speak, and I just kept praying to be shown, like, how can we really do something different here that's going to create impact with our work and our legacy? And, it's evolved over the years, but at this point, we have kind of a combination of business training that we provide for private sector businesses that are interested in giving back and partnering with nonprofits. And then obviously, we love to sponsor nonprofits, not only financially, but as well, we like to give them the business trainings and the tools they need to scale their organizations so they can, create more service and more impact to the world.
It's so wonderful. So you said quite some time ago, when was it that you founded the business?
Well, this is my 9th business, and so it's kind of a fun thing. I've never, there was never like a hard stop between one business and the next business. They all kind of rolled together. And I started volunteering with CASA when I was 23 years old. I'm 53 now, so 30 years ago. Worked with CASA, worked with Habitat for Humanity, Family Outreach, the Pachamama Alliance, the New Peaks Foundation. I keep going on. We've been doing fundraising now. As a really a serious business model. We had an element of that when we first started doing our live events in 2011, 2012. We were kind of dabbling in how to really marry it. But I'd say 2015 is when we got serious about our branding and our marketing as a fundraising organization.
Oh, that is so awesome. Yes, when I was looking at the details on your website, I could see you are a serial entrepreneur. You have had quite some success.
Yeah, you could say that. I think so. I don't meet many, we've sold 6 of our companies, and we've been really blessed over the years, to build organizations that were owner independent. Part of my superpower is I love, like many founders, I love the creativity. I love creating the systems and launching, but I don't always love day-to-day operations. So we became, adept at building great teams early on.
Yes. Well, I think that really lends itself to the topic that we're going to be discussing today. Obviously, you having a great deal of experience with this, having so many businesses that have been quite successful. And honestly, Laura, as I was, looking through your bio, I could very well see that all that you do comes from such a place of heart and giving and love. And so I'm very excited for you to talk a little bit about your Fast Focus signature presentation that you often do. You had mentioned earlier that this is something that you launched quite some time ago, but
Yes.
It's true today and forever and always. It's a challenge for busy women and men who have so much on their plate and have such passion for the work that they do.
Yes.
And not getting distracted with the day-to-day. You mentioned that I, like you, do not often like all the day-to-day operations, but I know I got to get it done in order to, achieve that goal. So any insight and information that you can share about that would be greatly valued by our audience. And I know that in our conversation today, I've noted that the key takeaways that you'll be sharing with our audience are how to tell essential activities from inessential ones and start working only on the crucial ones, which is oftentimes hard to do, and how to stay on track, avoid those distractions, oh my gosh, which come every second of the day, and make the most of your work time, and then how to only do what gets results and stop wasting crucial time, which all sounds so incredibly like, yes, let's do that. So if you can walk us through and help us understand what we can do to make that happen, that would be awesome.
Beautiful. Well, I would say that again, we are only, we're all human and we're doing the best we can with what we have. And I'm fascinated, as you and I were talking about before we started this interview, this is something when I first started being asked to speak, Cindy, and people would say to us, how are you doing what you're doing? How are you building thriving businesses and still making contribution to the community and raising a family, yada, 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 right? I was like many women, busy with multiple hats, and many men today as well. And I thought the big challenge for all of us is this: how do we stay on track? How do we stay focused and really get the results and not get distracted? And I was giggling a little bit to myself this morning because, this as a conversation in 2010 was tiny compared to the amount of distractions we have today.
Sure.
If anybody's listening that's old enough to remember life before the internet. It's kind of a
Yeah,
fascinating thing, right? We didn't
it
used to have
is.
that. And then even, when you go to open up your email just to check in and see what's happening and what, how you can be of service to others, there's the news, right? And so then one
Mm-hmm.
thing leads to another thing, so on and so forth. So it's really an interesting thing. So I'd say that the first thing is, if we look at what's essential versus non-essential, let's start with that. Each day, this is a little bit more than time management. I think, we happen to be in a very spiritually connected community.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of our conversation is around how we start our conversations with God. And I don't want to offend anybody if that's not their practice, but it could be a daily meditation. It could be a daily gratitude. It's something about getting grounded first in
Yeah.
being present in what's important, and really choosing a handful of things. I like to see no more than 5 things, because I think realistically, with all there is to do things well, you need to give yourself a target each day.
Mm-hmm.
And, before I get out of bed in the morning, after I do my gratitude practice and say my prayers, I really ask to be shown, what are the 3 things that I really want to get accomplished today, that I know are most aligned with the purpose and the vision and the mission of what's coming up next. It might be our current launch, it might be a relationship. But what I find is that when I do that, if I really tune in, that's very helpful to give myself the opportunity to do those things first.
Mm-hmm.
Because then at the end of the day, I meet way too many folks that at the end of the day are talking about they don't have enough time. And the reality is we all have exactly the same amount of time, right? So
Right.
people who are successful, I find this in business and life and initiatives and nonprofits, are really focused on what's in alignment with the bigger vision and mission.
Mm-hmm.
Not what's the busy work, what can I be doing, but what's that thing that's super important and a priority. And usually, I find, again, if you take a look at this, it's not that complicated. Giving yourself 3 things to do instead of 20
Mm-hmm.
has you at the end of the day feeling a little more relaxed and like, at least I got these things done.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, Laura, I have to tell you, I so love that message that you just shared. In fact, I've got a little sign next to my bed that says meditate and pray and then start the day.
yes, I love that. Meditate and
Yes.
pray and then start the day. Well, that's what we do. And that's what I recommend for others to do. But that's really, for me, been, a great gift. And I'm in a different season in life now, in my 50s.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in my 30s and I had to bounce out of bed and get babies to school, it was a totally different world, right?
Right.
So I think, again, for young families, even that's a piece, but finding that time, maybe you have to take, a lot of times I would take the babies to school and then find my time for prayer and meditation
Right.
before I started my work day. But really tuning in and being present is important, I believe, for getting clear about essential versus non-essential.
Oh, I
The
would
other
so
piece
agree.
of
It does keep us grounded, right? Like that,
it does.
it helps, kind of kickstart that day in a way that, like you said, keeps us kind of connected to our heart so that the work that we then do is not just the busy work, it's got
Yeah.
a greater purpose. So I love your suggestion that you start the day that way and then pick the top 3 things that come out of that kind of grounded place. That's wonderful.
Well, and because your audience are people, like our audience, that are really committed to purposeful work,
Mm-hmm.
we always feel that there's a bit of a calling in that and a divine element. And so, again, we're very faith-based. So for us, it's just really remembering that we're not doing this alone, and, getting out of our own way and being kind and compassionate when we do have a mere mortal moment and the mind gets busy. So
Mm-hmm.
getting those essential things done first is important. The next thing I'd say about, how that ties into the other takeaway we talked about, we wanted to really provide in today's conversation, is how to stay on track. How to stay on track, I believe we have the greatest resource on the planet that is free, and it's called a calendar. And back in the day, again, before we were all digital, I used to carry around a day timer. Again, if anybody's old enough to remember those little books, right? Like the little day timer I carried around with me everywhere, and wrote everything in the calendar until it got to be where there just wasn't enough space. I was very grateful for Google Calendar and digital, because now we can put it all, there's lots of things you put in the day. But one of the things I'll say is that by writing down what those activities are, so kind of that first thing is writing those things down
Mm-hmm.
and scheduling them. right? So I have a little different workflow than most people because I can, and I'm grateful for that. But generally my call schedule when somebody wants to book a time with me or have an appointment, and I might have sent this to you, Cindy, initially, my call hours are between 1 and 4 Pacific, Monday through Thursday. If I'm traveling and speaking, which I do a lot, those days are blocked off. I don't try to talk to people when I'm in an airport or in a car. I just don't even do it anymore. It just doesn't work. Multitasking is just, again, something that in my early years, I thought there was some valor in there. And I'm realizing that presence and being on one track is really important. So if you've decided that these are the things I must get done today, the next thing I'd say is write those things down right away. So before you and I had this call this morning, not normally a time I do calls, but I have my calendar's pretty open. It's open really until 1 p.m. So the first thing that I'll do is get up and then write down where are those things going to happen today in the schedule. When you write things in your calendar, two things happen. Many things happen, but two criteria here, or two really fundamentals. One is that the time is allocated for the task to get completed. So, if we've got the same amount of time, you and I, and we've got these blocks of time, we are big fans of Google Calendar, but whatever calendar you use, if there's space there, that's when the activity that you need to get done today is going to get done. But it has to be written down. Right? And so then the time is actually scheduled. And it also creates, a second thing it does is it creates an accountability for you. I'm a big fan of no to-do list. And I know that that's going to upset certain people because there's a lot of my friends who are very connected to their to-do list. And what I've learned over the years for productivity and for getting stuff done and staying on track is that if it's written in the calendar, I don't have to write it on a piece of paper. It's there. It's scheduled. The time is allocated. And I have a little personal responsibility to complete what's in my calendar. And then if something doesn't get done, I have all these little ticks and trips. I can't speak. Ticks and trips, tricks and tips. Too early in the morning. If it doesn't get done, then we move it to the next day. My entire team shares my Google Calendar, right? So they know exactly where I am, and they know more than they want to know, like that, I'm hosting a birthday party for my husband tonight, so I'm cooking. That's in the calendar. That time has to be allocated. Right?
I'm so happy to hear you say that. I actually have just started the share of the calendar with the team to that degree. Like I put everything in there, but I want to get your thoughts on a couple of things.
Sure.
So I have my written calendar as well. I think that there's just something that happens when you write that down that kind of ingrains it in my mind. And then I have my Google Calendar, and my team sees all of that, and I do the chunking of the time, and people know exactly what's going to take place when. So my first question would be, and you answered it a little bit, but here's one of the problems that I think I myself have, and I think our audience would have as well. When you don't get it done, because I hear this so often. It's like, okay, I'm going to block that time, and I'm going to get it done in that time. And when I don't get it done, I get bothered by it, and it bugs me. And then if I have to bump it to the next day, I have this level of discouragement that I didn't get it done. So how do you kind of balance that in your mind and from a productivity standpoint?
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking that, because that's where I was going to go next.
Oh, good.
Until I got excited thinking about this birthday party that I'm having tonight for my husband. I was like, oh wait, I gotta go to the grocery store. It's written down. It's in the calendar. Everybody knows. So two things. For me, one calendar is where it's at. And, as I'm just kind of, as an organization, it could be different, I know, for different folks, but for me, one calendar is where it's at, because it's on it's obviously on the computer, it's on my telephone. If I think of things that I want to get done, I write them down in my calendar rather than, again, keeping a to-do list. So it just simplifies everything for me. And we don't overcommit. Okay. So let's talk about how it feels when you don't get something done. Two activities I'm in practice with. Okay. One is moving that activity to the next day, to the next block of time when things are available. And again, that's not a travel day, which is a huge part of my work. Okay. So that get it done. If I move something for more than 2 weeks, Cindy, because ask me how I know, I've done this. Right? I'm just telling you the truth. If I move something more than 2 weeks, then at our team meeting, we have team meetings every Monday at 9:00 in the morning, one of the items that I'll have written in the calendar, because here's the other thing too, our team meeting agenda is in the calendar. So as I'm thinking of things I want to talk to my team about, I write it in the notes of the appointment for 9 o'clock on Monday morning.
Okay.
If I notice that I've moved something more than 2 weeks, then I write in the notes for the meeting, who can help me with this?
Oh, that's
Clearly,
awesome.
I'm not, I can't beat myself up. I'm doing the best I can, just like you are. Clearly, this is not getting done. So if it's important, and obviously it must be important, or else we wouldn't have written it down, who on my team can help?
Perfect. Oh, that's
And sometimes
wonderful.
it's just a small thing, and I think a lot of times, I don't know if you get stuck here, but I know I do, and I know a lot of other leaders do. We forget to ask. Our
Right.
team is there and they would love the opportunity to be of support to move our organization forward. And sometimes we get a little bit of, what I call Mimi syndrome, right? Like, how am I going to get it done?
Right.
I've got to do this or I've got to do that. Every time I'm looking at how do I get something done, I know I'm playing small. When I ask who can help me with this, that's a big distinction.
That is. And, I think oftentimes when I find myself moving it over and over, there's also a little bit of that hesitation in asking for help because I put it on me first. And
Yeah.
if I feel like I'm passing it to somebody else, it feels like, oh gosh, I'm letting myself down. I'm letting my team down. I'm just pushing it off on them. But I know they don't look at it that way. So I just need to give my permission to ask for help more. So that's great advice.
Yeah, learning to ask is a big tenet of leadership. And I'm thinking about, the folks that listen to your show that are really called, this deep, purposeful work that we're in. We don't have to do this. It was interesting for me when I first started doing this work, this, current iteration of my legacy work. I kind of thought everybody had the giving gene, and I've come to know that that's not the case. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we're all, not all of us are wired for this. And I think it's so for me, I feel like it's so connected to our soul. It's connected to our purpose. It's connected to our calling. And so I think that when you talk about feeling bad or being emotionally attached, I wonder, I don't know, because I'm made this way, but I wonder if folks that have just like strictly numbers types of businesses,
Yeah.
if they have kind of the same guilt and pressure that we put ourselves under. It's important to allow ourselves to have compassion and to be not only good at asking, but really good at receiving support, because we
Yes.
do have a mission that's not just about ourselves. It's really about service to others.
Well, I think you've really defined our audience. I know through our Facebook group and conversations with, clients and the folks that we're working with, that is exactly how they feel. By
Yeah.
and large, we have such a purpose and we feel so driven by, kind of our heart to do this work that we want to perform our best and we don't want to have to burden anybody else. I know it's not a burden, but oftentimes we think of it that way. So
Yeah.
I think that's great advice for our nonprofit community. And, I was trying to think of, ways in which they could, ask for that help. Because a lot of these folks are working either independently or with a very small team or not a team
Right.
at all.
Right.
And I know that my involvement with nonprofits, and I know you've been involved with them, many of them as well. I think that we've got this pool of volunteers. We have people who understand and really believe in the mission that whether they're called, titled a volunteer or not, volunteer doesn't have to look like going out in the field and helping on the service side. It
Right.
could very well be helping with, managing a marketing calendar, helping with
Exactly.
content development,
Yeah.
helping with social media, those sorts of things. They just need to think beyond the what oftentimes we feel like we're in this box and we can't ask for help because we don't have another staff member to help us. Volunteers and just a pool of people that nonprofits can tap into can be that
Yes.
resource for support.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think, it's an interesting thing because for whatever reason, my calling, my life for 30 years has been to have kind of one foot in the nonprofit world and one foot in the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
And, through the work we do today with Limitless Women and our legacy leaders, which is really a gift in my life to be able to bridge those gaps. You know what I mean? Instead of me kind of being in the middle, it sounds funny when I say that about bridging the gap, but what does it look like to bring those two together? And the reason why I bring that up is, a lot of times we were talking about this about team, people would like to help, but they don't know how. And if we don't ask them, they can't contribute, right? So it's an interesting thing. Like, let's say that you're having a nonprofit that's struggling with really keeping track of your finance. Who do you know that is a friend or a family member or even an associate that might be a bookkeeper that would really love the opportunity to share their talents?
Yes.
And I think about this when we're talking about leadership. This piece around who's going to take charge. It's not. There's no benefit when we try to wear every hat in our organization.
Right.
So we talk about like what's essential and non-essential. I think one of the other ways that you want to stay on track is to really look at your superpower. What is in your unique area of genius that only you can do? That this is a place, again, that you've done again and again. You've got strength. You might have mastery. It might be marketing. It might be bookkeeping. It might be relationship building. It might be fundraising. And the other things that are not in your area of genius, especially for small nonprofits that are starting, with a founder and maybe a couple of friends, again, build your community, build your advisors, build your tribe of people with complementary talents.
Yes.
With things that are different than what you know how to do, and let them share. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, but there's so much focus on raising dollars and cents. We all need to build thriving organizations. We need different types of skill sets and talents. And then people need to dedicate their time. Sometimes it's the very simple menial tasks that create overwhelm.
Right.
So having, getting together on a Saturday and organizing the office or having a painting party. I mean, there's different things that you can do, where you can volunteer your time that's outside of the box of what most people think.
That's great advice. Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think that, oftentimes when, at least for me, I know that I'm in that place of needing to ask for help. Yeah. And when my ego's tied to it, I might not go there quite as quickly as I should. But when I hear myself saying things like, I'm so busy, yes. It's, like I've worked a long day and I'm exhausted. Like those are the cues when you know that, you need to be asking for help and it's okay to do so.
Well, and I want to go back to one thing here that I think is really important, Cindy, and that is that, not everyone is called for leadership, right? There's lots of people who are called to follow, and that's a beautiful divine, order in nature. But if you're in a position where you are responsible not only for yourself but for others in sharing the message, which I think a lot of marketers are in that position, we have to remember to fill up our own well first, and remember that self-care is not. It's just not negotiable. It has to happen. And I say this, because we just came back from Africa, and I'm amazed at times, and I just say this in a gracious way, how many of us in the first world, where we have access to resources and water and electricity and freedom and all kinds of amazing gifts that we have, create our own type of overwhelm versus, folks in developing nations who, women are walking miles to go get fresh water for their children. Their kids might have one meal a day if they're fortunate enough to be able to have them go to school. And school isn't free. They have to pay for school. And the average person in some of the countries we're visiting in are really living on less than $3 a day. So hard to fathom, right? And the reason I give that context is that we actually have, most of the people I'm sure who are listening to this, because the fact they're listening to this, we've gone past Maslow's hierarchy of survival needs. We've got past that. So I feel like it's a bit of our responsibility to become really clear again about our priorities and where we focus as an honor to the gifts we have. So the fact that we have the luxury to take time in the morning to meditate, pray, be connected, be present, get clear and focused about what matters, and then not make ourselves wrong if we don't get everything done today. Clearly, if we're alive and breathing, God's not done with us. We'll get to it the next day. If we don't get it to the next day, like I said, after 2 weeks, then we'll find someone else who we can partner with, because there's no lack of humans.
Right. Oh, that is, in keeping things in perspective,
Absolutely.
when and I know that, with nonprofits, so many of them are working towards serving those in need. And just hearing you speak about, those that we are serving, in whatever shape and form that a nonprofit exists, when we start to think about how busy we are and how, it's not, we're not able to achieve the things that we need to do on our to-do list, which we need to get rid of, as you say.
maybe.
If we think back to the mission, put things in perspective,
yes.
and then make it our responsibility to do things in a productive way so that we can help these people to the best of our ability.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I feel like, I love structure. I feel like, for years, people always asked me how I was successful in life and business. And I kept saying, it's all about the systems, but they weren't hearing that correctly. It wasn't systems was how I would use the terminology. When I talk about a calendar is a system. We talk about a daily prayer practice or meditation. That's a system. Yeah. So we all have, again, the same amount of time. How we choose to focus and block time is important. And what I feel like is if we would remember to take care of ourselves first, to take care of our basic needs, and then get really clear and focused on a few activities we're going to accomplish that are reasonable. And then we're not on social media, we're not watching television, and we're not, distracted. It's amazing how much free time you actually have. Yeah. That's the part that I think is a little bit of a mind blower. At times, again, in my earlier years when I was running, I had some kind of deep wounds that we can talk about in another conversation, but just trying to be enough, I think drove a lot of my, I grew up in a really painful childhood, and I think part of why I was so driven to do so many different businesses and do so much is that I was trying to be accepted and I was trying to be enough. And, I've really come to a deeper sense of peace and love. And I'm so grateful for all of the healing that I've been able to receive from people who saw me when I couldn't see myself. And I just put that out there because what ends up happening is this place underneath where we feel like we're not enough, there's not enough. We live in a very abundant world. And those of us who are called to be of service to others, if we could remember to, again, just know that there's time and space for us to take care of ourselves first. And then when we do that, we come to the conversation of service so much more present. And we offer so much more when we're fully focused on one thing instead of trying to do three things all at one time.
Absolutely. So good. Well, I think that's a great way to segue into the third point you had mentioned about how to do only what gets result and stop wasting crucial time. So what's your advice about being able to determine, when we are wasting time and when we aren't? I know there's, many distractions that, we can later look back on like, I shouldn't have spent that much time on social media or whatever, but what lens do we need to look through to be able to define the work that we do to get the results that we want?
Well, I think what's missing for most people that I work with, again, both in the private sector and the nonprofit sector, is a lack of clarity of what results actually are. So what I mean by that is there's a step before. So the step before is really getting clear about what's the next milestone, what's the next goal that we have. And then, so it's easy to say, like, we want to eradicate poverty on the planet, right? We can have these big, big visions, but how we get there is really important. And what are the steps? We don't go from 0 to 100 miles per hour overnight. And no great businesses and no great organizations are built overnight. So a lot of times when we see other people's results, we're like, oh, well, they've done that and I've only done this. That comparison thing is so ineffective. And one of my good friends and mentors, Sandra Yancey, who's the founder of eWomen Network, the co-founder, she says, don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle. I think that's so important. Yeah. So I'd say the piece about getting results, I don't want to skip just to the activity, Cindy. I think what's important is what's the result that we want for now? When we look at our year, our clients, we ask our clients to break their year into quarters, and we look at the different pillars of business. Again, I work with a lot of nonprofits, and so when I talk about the pillars of business, I want you to be thinking about your organization, whether you're in private sector or in nonprofit, for benefit. We like that better. You're still going to have day-to-day operations. You're still going to have finance. You're still going to have team development. Now, your team may be a team of volunteers, but there has to be a structure around how you engage volunteers, how you attract them, and how you retain them, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You want to be looking at sales and marketing. Now, we call sales and marketing that in the private sector, and in the nonprofit sector, we still have to really be bringing awareness. Marketing is key everywhere, and I know that that's a big focus on what you bring in service to others, so thank you for that. And then what we would call sales in the private sector, we call fundraising in the nonprofit sector.
Exactly.
So these are pillars of your organization. And what I'm saying that is I encourage each organization, each leader to get clear on which pillar do I want to focus on for this quarter, for this 90 days, let's say it's January to March. I'm going to really give full focus into building the organization's team. We're going to have volunteer appreciation. We're going to have structures. We're going to have somebody be in charge of that for this quarter so that those volunteers can then deliver the promise of fundraising if that's going to be our second quarter. So knowing what is you're focusing on is first. The second is what's the measurable results. So let's say that your organization know that you need a team of a financial specialist, you need somebody who's great at operations and systems, you need somebody who's great at marketing, you need somebody who's great at fundraising. I'm just using those four for right now.
Okay.
If you spent 90 days really building out that dream team, the entire year and the entire decade will go different. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
But the measurable results is important. So when we did, in 2015, we put out an initiative and said, we're really going to get clear about our legacy work. And Limitless Women was just actually kind of being born then. We were under the brand of Legacy Leaders. There's a point to that, but I'll come to it in a second. The reality is that we said, okay, could we raise $250,000 as a business training organization over the next 5 years? You know, we're small and mighty. I think we had a list of, maybe 2,000 people. I had just written my first book. I really didn't, we didn't know what we were doing, but we just knew that we wanted to get clear about it as a group and as a team. And it took us a little over 3 years to hit the $250,000 mark. Our initiative now is to see how quickly, and we'll see if we can do it this year, we hit the $1 million mark in fundraising.
Wow.
And then our future initiative, and I'm going to tell you this because I know that your community, like my community, is full of very visionary, creative leaders. So we can see someday I'd like to do this. Our future initiative is to raise $1 million annually. Now, I don't know how we're going to get there or how quickly we're going to get there, but I got to tell you that if we don't hit the $1 million mark first one time, we won't be able to replicate it.
Right.
Because the systems come as we progress. So to get results, to go back to the earlier question, I encourage people to have some flexibility, but also to have some clarity and some milestones. And why I said I'll come back to this piece is that this organization that we know today as Limitless Women, and I think we finally landed on it, started out when people said, how do you get so much done? I'm like, I'm just so passionate about what I do. So our first brand was Powered with Passion. And then people were like, okay, is this like a love thing? What is this? I'm like, okay, well, that's not a good brand. So then we went to Passion, Purpose, and Profits. And we thought we were on with that one, but then there were so many other people that were kind of doing the 3P thing. We're like, okay, we're going to still stand out. So we started talking about legacy, and we realized that legacy was not a language or a word that most of our women, responded to, and 99% of our audience was women. Okay, great. So what they did like was we had a Limitless Women event, and I wrote a book called Limitless Women, and there was this and that with Limitless Women. They'd always just flock to that. So why I'm telling you that is that as you create your milestones and as you create your initiatives, you're going to be as clear as you can be for right now. And every business that I've owned and every business and nonprofit that I've supported over 30 years, we do the best we can with what we know today. And I always feel that God has a bigger plan. The organization gets more clarity when we get into action of service. So hold your expectations loosely, but stay clear about what your metrics are. What are we measuring for? And that way you get results.
Oh, so good. Yes, we learn as we go, and it's not
Yes.
as though it's set in stone. And oftentimes when we first put that plan together, our mind kind of goes there like, okay, this is what we got to do. But in getting there, like you said, if you're wanting to make $1 million and you haven't yet made it, you have to try things, and some
Yes,
things are going to work and some aren't going to work. And being
exactly.
flexible will give you what you know, what you need to know to get to that milestone so that you can do it again and again and again. So good,
Exactly.
Laura.
Yeah,
Yes.
thanks. Thanks so much.
Yes. Oh,
So I had one more thing that I just wanted, like, which was in the productivity effectiveness arena.
yes, please.
And one of those things that I can tell you that I see a lot of times, again, with generous hearted folks like your
Mm-hmm.
community and our community, is that they tend to allocate way too much time for what needs to get done. And what I mean by that is there's some, I don't know if it's some law, but it's just this thing that things take the amount of time we give them. So what I noticed is when I first started doing my work, I would schedule hour-long conversations, and you could certainly fill up a whole hour, right? And I find that people that are not always effective allocate way too much time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you'll notice when you made an appointment to have a conversation with me, my URL for booking a call with me is for a 20-minute call.
I did. Yeah.
I generally can get amazing things done in 20 minutes. And what happens is if I'm on a call with someone who I haven't met before, I mean, you and I are new friends, we're just connecting. If it's not a match, it's okay if I get off the call in like 7 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
get really clear about the value of our time. If you want to find out about how to stop wasting crucial time, which is one of the things that you asked about,
Mm-hmm.
really be protective of your time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The most successful people I know actually have a lot of time freedom, but they choose to spend their time on activities and in conversations that really are in alignment with their vision and their mission.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So true.
Yeah.
I recently heard through one of the coaching calls that I participate in where I was told, and it really resonated with me. It goes back to what you're saying, like valuing your time and giving yourself so much time to complete something. But then it made it really personal when they said to me, Cindy, honor yourself, honor your
Yes.
commitment to the time that you allot to get something done, make it known for you and your team. And that way you can be that much more productive. And in honoring myself, it feels good. It's not just like
Yes.
I got to get this done. I only have so much time. It's like, no, I know I can do this in this much time. And I'm doing it as a way of honoring myself. So
Perfect. I love that. So if you can just keep remembering to do that,
I know I
that's
keep.
wonderful.
I have to try every day.
Well, and that daily practice piece is key, right?
Yeah.
I think that, if I know we just allocated just a few minutes here, so I want to wrap up and honor your time and ours. This piece around, being gentle, being compassionate with ourselves, and remembering, this little thing about Rome wasn't built in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing organizations don't happen overnight. They do happen when a group of committed individuals come together that share a vision and mission and culture and really focus on being in practice and being present and being on track with daily activities. That creates, miraculous results.
That it does. And you, my friend, have created some amazing results. And I am so grateful that you have taken the time to share your wisdom and your purpose with us. It really means a lot to me. And I'm certain that our audience has loved every minute of it as well.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm just so honored that you reached out. And, here's the piece. I want to say that social media can be a tremendous distraction if we're not focused and getting in there, in a really strategic way. I really check into LinkedIn, which is where you reached out to me. I think I check in there about once every 2 weeks. I have a team who does, media posts and things there, but I personally check in there about once every 2 weeks. So, I just want to say thank you again for reaching out to me, and just so honored for the opportunity to speak with you and to get to know you, and let me know how we can share your message to our audience as well. It would really be a pleasure to do that.
Oh, thank you so much, Laura. Yes, and for purposes of our audience, knowing how we connected, because Laura said, yes, it was through LinkedIn, and we've just become new friends. I got to tell you, y'all, we had this conversation, and I just sent her a message because I looked at her bio
Yeah.
and I thought, this is a woman that I would love to get to know. I sent her a direct message. She said, you know what, Cindy, I'd love to have a conversation with you. And in that quick little 20-minute conversation, it was divine the way that it came together, because we found that we have so many things that kind of intersect in terms of our focus in business and the things, the places that we've lived, and, all the things that we have done. So I am grateful, Laura, for the connection. Thank you, LinkedIn.
Yes, thank you, LinkedIn. Thank you, effective social media, right?
That was effective. Yes, I got some good results from that.
Yes,
but Laura, I know you have a book that you have released. So tell us a little bit about that before I let you go.
Oh, thank you so much for asking. I was like ready to bounce off. So a couple of things. I've written 2 books. One's called Stop the Spinning, Move from Surviving to Thriving. And if anybody wants to visit me online at limitlesswomen.com, you'll see a pop-up come up there. You can get a complimentary copy of that book. I'm just so happy to share it. It's a little bit about how I moved from what I alluded to earlier of a pretty tough childhood by American standards to having a life that's really beyond anything I could have dreamed of. That book is Moving from Surviving to Thriving, Stop the Spinning, excuse me. And then the second book is called Limitless Women, and it's really about empowering the next generation of leaders to really see themselves as givers, and really how that equates to not only your opportunity to give, but how it translates to your own life. And that one you can buy on Amazon if you're interested. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And I will say one thing, if I could, Cindy, that every Friday I send out a free gift to our online community. And if anybody's interested in that, they can go to freegiftfriday.com and opt in there. You'll get a complimentary copy of the first book, Stop the Spinning. And then on Fridays, I send out messages of inspiration around personal development and professional development, and a lot of things that we use as resources, like our marketing calendars and our, kind of our worksheets that we teach from on how to structure business and systems. So if anybody's interested, you can find that at freegiftfriday.com.
Yes, and I will attest. It's wonderful. I am on your list. I'm getting all those goodies, and
awesome.
I love it.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm honored. I'm so honored. Thank you so much.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. And the takeaway here in terms of, everybody finding fast focus to be more productive is wonderful, but just getting to know you and the mission that you are, achieving through your work is very inspiring. So again, thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you again for your invitation.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. Great advice from Laura about how we can all find the focus we need to show up each and every day and do our very best in fulfilling our personal purpose and our professional responsibilities. My greatest takeaway was when Laura talked about valuing our time. I'm really trying to stay connected to the thought of honoring my schedule and doing what I say I'm going to do in the time that I'm going to do it. I know it's hard for all of us, but remember, we all have the same amount of time each day. It's how we choose to use it that will generate either good or not so good results. I believe we can all be even more productive this year by following Laura's advice about how to identify essential and non-essential activities, how to stay on track and avoid distractions to make the most of our work time, and how to focus on the tasks that get results and stop wasting crucial time. With those 3 key things in mind as we go about our day, we will all be super productive and, even more importantly, achieve the things we want and need to this year, both personally and professionally. That's what I'm aiming for. Thanks for joining me and Laura today, and be sure to check out today's show notes. I've got links to all the goodness that Laura mentioned, so you can follow her and stay connected to Limitless Women. I know I will. I'll be back next week with more marketing tips, tools, and strategies to help you move your mission forward. Until next time, please keep doing what you're doing to make the world a better place.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Marketing for Small Nonprofits podcast. Check out show notes for today's episode at cindymaymarketing.com, and we'll see you next time.